Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first of Economy, Infrastructure and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Wow, that's a mouthful. Thursday the 30th of May and the time is 10 o'clock. So welcome to the first committee meeting of this for the municipal year, and we'll get straight on with the agenda. So item 1 is apologies. Deb.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Hudson and Hayden.
Thank you. And everybody else? Just one missing, I believe. Yeah, just one. Do members have any declarations of interest for any of the agenda items that we've got this morning? I'll take the silence as a no. Minutes of the meeting held on 28th of March. Are we saying they are a true record of events, and can I sign them off? Proposed by Councillor Hudson. Hudson even. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kruskonjik. And we'll go on to item 4, which is Staffordshire County Council's Employment and Skills Strategy Delivery Update, and we'll go straight to Councillor White.
Morning, Chair. Nice to see you all. This item is our first deep dive into the delivery of the Employability and Skills Strategy, which you considered when it was out for consultation. Prior to being adopted back in September of last year. So since then, following the feedback from this committee and from the public consultation, that strategy was adopted by Cabinet a little later in the autumn, and we've been working now for about 6 months on the delivery of the strategy. I think it's important to say, before we go into the detail, and there's a lot of detail in the report, so I'm not going to attempt to recreate it all. I know that you all have read through the detail prior to today, but the overall picture of the strategy is one of continuation of work that we've been doing over the last decade and a half to transition the Staffordshire economy from one that was post-industrial and relatively lower skilled and lower paid in many parts of our county to one that's higher skilled, higher paid and more productive. And this strategy is building on the success that we'd already had in that respect. And it's important that we do renew our strategies from time to time to adapt to changing circumstances, particularly in the post-pandemic world. The needs of our economy and of our workforce have changed. And we'll look into that set of priorities and delivery in a moment. Before I go any further, I will just ask my officers to introduce themselves. I may ask them to make some comments on some of the detail as we go through the report. But I'll start to my right.
Hello, I'm Darren Farmer, Economy and Skills Analyst at Staffordshire County Council. So I lead on the evidence base for our employment and skills strategy and our economic strategy work.
And to my left.
Morning, I'm Vicky Perry. I'm the Employability Manager within the Skills and Employability team, managing the Staffordshire Jobs and Careers brokerage team.
Thank you, otherwise known as the Dream Team. Okay, so moving on into the report, and I'll just consider the priorities within the strategy in turn, and then we'll talk about some of the outputs overall afterwards. So the first priority within the strategy was creating an aspirational and active workforce to increase economic activity, inclusivity, and productivity through our Jobs and Careers Service. Now, we've got a deep dive into the Jobs and Careers Service coming up in the next agenda item, so I'm not going to attempt to get us to do that twice. But I think the important points to highlight there are the successful rollout of that Jobs and Careers Service, and also the securing of external funding through developer contributions from the West Midlands Interchange to fund a significant part of that work. We'll delve into that in more detail in the next agenda item, so I'm not going to attempt to do more on that unless the committee chooses to ask me any questions at this point. The second priority is providing an inspirational careers advice and guidance offer to help access the world of work and career opportunities, principally through our careers and participation service in the Careers Hub. Now, this is an area that's particularly important given the increase in NEETs that we've seen after many years of the number of young people not in employment, education or training decreasing in Staffordshire. And we have a trend rate that is massively below the national and regional averages for that. But we have seen some slight increases since the pandemic. So at the moment we have 4.5% of the population. I think it's under 25s, isn't it, for that? Yes. We're currently sitting at 4.5% of our under 25 population who are not in employment, education or training versus a national average of 4.9%. So that's something that's of particular concern to us. The other thing that we've seen in recent times is the government's change in policy relating to LEPs, so local enterprise partnerships, held the careers service offer for the county, and that service has now transitioned into the county council for us to manage on behalf of both Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire as part of the removal of LEPs and those responsibilities transferring to top-tier local authorities. So there's a lot of work that we have to do in this area, and it is something that we're going to be having a particular focus on. I know I've asked the committee if you'll consider taking a standalone item on NEETs a little later on in the year for us to consider this in detail as well. But that is a particular concern for us, to make sure that we are bearing down on that. It leads into a whole range of other areas, as I'm sure the committee know, in terms of mental health and well-being for young people, and anxieties in terms of accessing training and employment. So there's a lot there for us to unpack. The next priority area is increasing technical skills to drive productivity and growth and respond to business needs, both now and insofar as we can predict them in the future, through particularly our apprenticeship and T-level programs. So we have very strong links to our colleges and universities. We have very active relationships with them. We have a joint meeting of all of the college principals once a quarter in Staffordshire, chaired by me, and my most recent meetings with our two university vice chancellors at Keele and Staffordshire have been in the last 8 weeks, just to illustrate the closeness of those relationships. So we are constantly working with our skills providers to help them in terms of supporting their activities and removing barriers to the provision that they want to offer to our employers. Key within that, in terms of new developments, is the Staffordshire Institute of Technology, which is now largely finished, just a few hundred metres away from the building where we're sat here in Stafford. And that is a really key development for growing that skills provision in terms of technical skills, particularly within engineering and manufacturing. That's the focus for the IoT. Now, in terms of outputs for apprentices, we know that there has been a gradual decline in apprenticeship starts across the country. Staffordshire has seen a similar experience of that, with a 13.4 reduction in the percent reduction in the number of apprentice starts in the county between 2018-19 and 2022-23. The main fall within that has been apprentices at an intermediate level. So we've seen a significant decline in those during that period. That is in part due to the wage offer that apprentices tend to receive for those lower level apprenticeships. We have a very low level of unemployment in Staffordshire, as we know, so it's been trending at or below 3% for many years now. And there is an issue which would be very grateful if a new government would address, not straying into policy there for our authority chair, but for national policy, it would be very helpful if the government would address the ability of apprentice employers to be able to use their apprenticeship levy money to subsidise wages as well as training costs. What is happy news is that within higher apprenticeships, so degree equivalent and above, we've seen an increase in Staffordshire of 51.5% during that period since 2018. So our aspiration is to have a higher qualified workforce. That is extremely good news, but we are concerned that the stepping stones to get to that do require more people to be engaging with those entry-level apprenticeships. So that is a concern and another area of work that we will be prioritising. Moving on, our next priority is increasing innovation and enterprise skills through supporting entrepreneurialism, business growth, and through our Ignite programme. And we continue to support that work. So during 2023, nearly 33,000 businesses called Staffordshire their home, which is an increase of 13% since 2014. We have seen within that an increase in our business birth rate, which has been one of our other priorities, where Staffordshire, for the first time in our recorded history in terms of business births, has met and is in line to exceed the national average in terms of start-up rates. And within the Ignite programme, we continue to develop that successfully. I think we've delivered it now to around about 13,000 college students, and we're looking at how we can expand that perhaps into the school sector as well. So looking to deliver that to post-16 students in schools. And then finally, our priority of Staffordshire being a place of learning to instill a culture of lifelong learning by delivering our community learning and multiply programme. We've had a huge success in this area, which was independently assessed by Ofsted during the year, who rated our service as good. If you read the report, it was an extremely strong good, although they're not able to offer you subgrades within that. But we have a very strong community learning service. Within that, our multiply provision has got up and running very quickly. The committee will know that multiply came very late last year, and we had to get it up and running extremely quickly to get the learners on roll. The result of that is that within the 23-24 financial year, we've already achieved 2,100 enrolments into our community learning service. That's against a target for the entire year of 3,000. And within Multiply, we've achieved 2,150 participants across the county, and that is a really significant achievement in something that we've got going very, very quickly indeed. I might just pause there because I've been talking for quite a long time, and we can talk about outputs in a moment, but there's a lot there on priorities. So would you like to pick up on any of that before I roll on?
Do members have questions? Charlotte?
Thank you, and sorry I was a little bit late. Road work seems to go along with rain. The government's priority seems to be for higher level apprenticeships. The government's priority seems to be higher level apprenticeships, particularly degree level, talking about, having fewer degrees, more apprenticeships. My concern is for those groups of people who have virtually no skills, certainly no qualifications, but very low-level skills in numeracy and literacy. These were very often taken up in training courses which were funded by the EU. A lot of those have gone by the wayside. And my concern is that with the increasing look at the higher level apprenticeships, that we're going to ignore the people right at the bottom. Because unless they can get on the ladder, then they are just forgotten. So I want to know about what you're doing to make sure that the shift does not ignore them. And then I'd like to know, in terms of our local apprenticeships, what percentage have completed, and what is the dropout rate? And then subsequently, I see that you're talking about supporting progression opportunities, and I think you mentioned them all, and so I'd be interested to know where that's going to be delivered.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Nice to see you. Yes, so the we've been watching the policy announcements over the last week or so, haven't we? In terms of skills and training, and I think if we try and cut through the election background noise, I think the clear priority that's there from both parties is higher level apprenticeships being the goal, along with achieving higher level qualifications through other routes, and I hope being agnostic about which route, provided the quality is good. And I think that's the key thing, the quality must be good. And we can debate how you assess that and how you fund that nationally. But quality provision that leads to good outcomes, I think, is the key. Now, what is necessary, though, in order to reach that is that you're actually ready to access that level of provision. And I think what you can see in terms of the strategy, and it's been deliberately written as a bit of a sort of life story in terms of your engagement with skills and employability, is we're very concerned that young people, when they're going through the later stages of their schooling, that they've got that they are learning in an environment that is aspirational, that they've got good careers, advice and guidance. Crucially, that we are catching those people who are at risk of falling out of education post 16 and making sure that they continue along that journey, recognising that the number of jobs for people without skills are going to decrease significantly, and that is a huge Staffordshire challenge. We know that because it's been fairly easy to get a job in Staffordshire for quite a lot of years, that if you're low aspiration and you struggle a little bit more with education, that it's all too easy to get a job that doesn't have those things. The risk is that job won't be there in a generation's time and you'll still need a job. So the things that I'd highlight in terms of our offer are we have got a very strong focus on NEETs, although it's increased recently. That is from a level of a massive reduction in it over the last decade and a half. And it is a priority work stream for us to get on top of that. We need to work very closely with schools on that, which I know now goes to another committee to consider, but there's an enormous amount that needs to be unpacked in terms of that. For those that do fall out of that, our community learning offer, and particularly Multiply, actually are really good offers to get people back into that learning habit. Just on the question regarding completions, I might look over my right shoulder, Darren, see if you've got the detail on that.
So in terms of higher apprenticeship completion rates, I think that varies considerably between subject to subject. So within some of our priority sectors, we've seen very good increases in achievement rates. So engineering in particular, that's very strong. So up in the 80% mark. Whereas some of the other subject areas, potentially it does drop down below the 50% mark. Again, that's reflective partly on learners and partly on the actual employees themselves. So whether they are actually good higher apprenticeships within those employers. So that is an issue that we're looking to address. And again, that comes back to working very closely with our employer base across Staffordshire, making sure that those apprenticeships are effective, and again, developing T levels as well at the same time. So probably a lower level than higher apprenticeships. We're also kind of, in terms of GCSEs as well, just to go back to the previous point, I think we have seen improvements in GCSE attainment rates across Staffordshire, and that is increasing, but we have got some issues within some of our schools. And those schools we're working very closely with through kind of like the Careers Hub in particular, so taking employers within our priority sectors into those schools, giving those young people the opportunity to understand those places of work, and then to develop the potential skills that are required to go into those jobs. Again, raising aspirations for our young people within those schools that potentially are underperforming at this point in time.
I think the other issue that I'd highlight just in terms of those completion rates is that this does come back to this issue about wage support within apprenticeships, and this is something that this council and councils across the country have been asking for a very long time. If you are on an apprenticeship where the pay element is not that great and you can secure a better paid job, there is a strong temptation to move to that better paid job, even if you can't complete your apprenticeship training as part of it. That is something that needs to change, and we've left that to employers for a very long time. Clearly that doesn't work well, or they would be doing it because I'm sure they'd want to retain those staff if they could. So I think that's something as a country where we do need to look at that again. There's a lot of levy money that gets paid out by businesses that could be adapted to deliver the same purpose, but just not all of it paying for the training. So I would be really keen to see that happen, as I have been and most councils have been for a very long time. Regarding the moorlands, forgive me, that is work in progress, but I'll be delighted to, I think you were referring to the plan to recruit advisors specifically to work in the moorlands within our pilot there. That is work that is just getting off the ground. We're delighted that we have a renewed and invigorated working relationship with Staffordshire Moorlands District Council. Exciting changes at the college in Leek as well. So we're quite keen to go at that at a pace. We think it would be really valuable work. Happy to bring an update on it when we have one, and to write to you separately about it if you'd like me to.
You're not a Manchester City supporter, are you? No. Good. Thank you.
If the chair will allow me, Derby County, I'm afraid.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I thought the report, by the way, was excellent. Absolutely excellent. Like Charlotte, I do have a worry about NEAT. And that ties into my second point. I've asked a number of employers, including my electrician, my plumber, and an extremely large engineering company in Staffordshire, what's the problem? What's the big problem with apprenticeships? And they say the dropout rate, and it's all down to aspiration. And they don't seem to think that they seem to think that if the start time is 7:30, it's okay to come in at 7:45 or 8 o'clock, and they get sacked for that. And so there is an issue about how the youth of today treat being in employment. It's very different from school, and that's an issue that I think that the County Council could perhaps factor in when you're talking to schools in explaining how, life's tough, but you do not want to end up as a NEET. My other 2 points are with regard to technical skills. We also need to attract more technical companies to match those, so we can sell the fact that we are with the new tech college, etc., that we can say, look, this is a place where we have a high level of able people to work in your industry. Please relocate here or start you. People like Give Energy, who want to set up major manufacturing bases in this county. I think that's really important. And my last point is you mentioned about the restaurant, pub trade, and I think we need to encourage the borough councils, town councils, to regenerate their town centres with apartments, with houses, not shops, so that there is greater footfall in built-up areas which will attract restaurants and pubs and keep them open. And we're seeing that in places like Newcastle, and there are other parts of Staffordshire where we're seeing it. But it's really, really important that we increase the footfall for these businesses, otherwise they will fold. Because at the end of the day, bottom line is the bottom line, and if you're not making a profit, you're not going to last too long. So I think as part of the strategy, there's a lot of things that will help make this excellent report even better. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks for those questions, Graham. So one of the things with taking reports to scrutiny is that you've got to keep them self-contained enough that you can scrutinise them in a day, can't you? So I'll take the point about town centres first, because I think it's the one that I'll probably have to deal with the quickest. Yes, regeneration of our town centres is a massive priority for this council and for all of our partner councils here in Staffordshire. It was my pleasure last week to be at UK Reef, the largest property development and investment conference in the UK, the sort of exciting version of MIPIM. I was just thinking of the right way of describing it there. So up in Leeds, but it's a conference with 12,000 delegates who attend, the whole of the property world. And most importantly, for a place like Staffordshire, investors and developers who can put significant amounts of money, billions of pounds of money to invest that they can put into Staffordshire. And we were there alongside all 8 of our districts and boroughs on the same stand, selling Staffordshire together to bring those sort of businesses here. It is incredibly important, and actually we do a really good job as a place on that. And that regeneration of our towns, yes, the key reason for doing that, along with making our towns pleasant places to be, is its jobs. That is the reason for doing it, good jobs. Having said that, the hospitality sector in Staffordshire has bounced back from the pandemic extremely well. It is a thriving sector. There's a question of where those businesses are trading. Do we have enough of them in our town centres versus our rural areas? Yes, that's an important part of the regeneration, but it is doing well. I've just handed over the chairmanship of our tourist board, which has now evolved into local visitor economy partnership, to Alistair Budd from Trentham Gardens. But whilst I was chair, the 2 key work streams that we had in that area were increasing our accommodation offer so that more people stay in Staffordshire when they visit us. But the other one was around recruitment and recruiting more skilled people, particularly into jobs like chefs and other people working within the catering side of hospitality. So there is a lot of demand there. It's thriving. Forgive me, that was a long, short answer on that point. Regarding that culture of work that you spoke about, yes, this is a challenge. I mean, I suspect, though, that if I went back to Roman times, I'd find a centurion telling me that the new recruits just didn't have the work ethic that they used to. I think maybe there's a bit of every generation just comes at it in a slightly different way. But I think we all recognise that in the here and now, there is a particular issue. So I do agree with you that may have been growing before the pandemic. I think it's largely around social isolation in young people, actually, that the world that young people live in has narrowed due to a variety of things that we haven't got time to discuss today. But then the pandemic, locking those young people away at home, has accentuated that. And I think that there are some problems that come out of that that we're seeing in our schools in terms of apathy, in terms of not understanding what you have to put in to get something out from the world of work, and also a bit of a degradation of that sense of working to someone else's timetable. And I think that those are things that we need to help young people with. It's all too easy to blame people, isn't it? But people are basically a product of their environment. So I think whether it's within this strategy where in particular I'd highlight the Ignite programme, where we've had over 13,000 16, 17-year-olds doing entrepreneurialism training. And the reason why we've been doing it is, yes, we'd love some of those people to start up their own businesses, but mainly it's so they start thinking about things from the employer's perspective. So, you know, why would your employer like you to turn up on time, for example? But it's a more interesting way of doing that. But as a society, we need to do more work on that to help and support young people so that they get what they need to do to have successful lives. So I hope that's a good enough answer. It's such a massive topic, but we are looking to directly address it through Ignite in particular, and absolutely attract more employers to Staffordshire. But again, that's probably sort of out with the remit of this committee today.
Thank you, Philip. David.
Thank you, Chairman. If I cross the political divide, I'm sure you'll very, very quickly stop me. But I wouldn't question for a minute that we have a very, very considerable demand for apprentices. And we need to look at how we're going to be able to find places for those apprentices. And it bothers me particularly because the change in the way the economy now works. People like plumbers, electricians, bricklayers are all one-man bands that are effectively self-employed. So I wonder what the opportunities are for those sort of people to take on an apprentice. It's not only financial, but it's also an administrative problem of how they're actually going to do it. It bothers me when I go back to my youth, when the expectation of young people was that they would go into those sort of trades and to go into apprenticeships. We've now gone into this era of everybody thinks that they have the right to go to university, although university may not be a suitable option. It's an alternative to not having made up your mind what you want to do. So let's go to university and defer it and see what happens in 3 years' time. So if I go back again to my youth, we used to have a technical college which was entirely specialised in taking apprenticeships of people in the building trade. That building now is something entirely different. And so I do have this concern about how we're going to attract young people into the jobs which are the essential things which need to be done. It bothers me, particularly something that was said before. I have 5 quarries in my division, of which I'm very much involved and I work with on all sorts of areas. But they have massive recruitment problems because they start at 7:30 in the morning and potential employers say, oh, 7:30, can I come in at 9 o'clock? No, you can't come in at 9 o'clock. We start at 7:30. And, oh, I don't want to work Saturdays. Well, the quarry is open on a Saturday. The fact that it pays extremely well financially is not an issue with young people. It's getting out of bed. And I'm probably an old man making a criticism of young people, and I apologise for that. But I do wonder how we're going to overcome those sort of problems as time goes by. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Nice to see you. Yes, I mean, I think that culture of work question we were just talking about with Graham's question as well. I think I've spoken to that. I think there are some challenges there that we need to address as a society, and we can play our part in that here in Staffordshire. I do come back though in Staffordshire to the point that we have very low unemployment, and I think that's one of the things that creates challenges for employers if they have a job where there is something about it that people find less attractive. So early starts, working weekends, those sorts of things, and we absolutely want to be a low unemployment place. What place wouldn't want to be? So that success that we have in creating jobs in our county I mean, we've had a 14% increase in the number of jobs that are available to people in Staffordshire in the last decade and a half. It's a massive increase in that. But there are consequences to it. So I think the challenge, therefore, is what can we do to help employers to make those jobs more attractive when they're jobs that are important to the economy as well. And our quarries are very important to our economic growth. You can't build infrastructure without aggregates. So we do need to do that, and I'd hope that those employers engage with the county council. If they don't, then we can certainly I know they'll engage with us on the planning side of things, but we can certainly engage with them in other areas. And regarding those different pathways, as an authority, we need to be agnostic in terms of where people take their training. If they want to go to university on a good course that they find valuable, then that's good. We have two fantastic universities in the county, as I say, at Keele and Staffordshire universities. But the main body of work that we have to do is that roll around inclusion. It's getting more people into skills and training, and that's why our focus is mainly on the apprenticeship route and on encouraging the uptake of T-levels, because they're the areas where people who don't perhaps have the means to go to university, whether they're there with great purpose in mind or there because they're enjoying a university degree before they decide what they do with their lives. It's those apprenticeships and T-levels that we need to focus on to increase the number of people who are gaining higher level skills.
Bernard?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, when we're talking about apprenticeships, we really, on all of our discussions, and when you look at what we have on the screens here, we're talking about able-bodied people. But quite frankly, I mean, because of what's happened to myself over the last couple of years, I've met quite a few disabled people. And by talking to them, you realise they do not want treating any different than anybody else. And I think when you look at an apprenticeship, then maybe what Staffordshire should be doing is treating them as a group that's got their own apprenticeship capabilities maybe, or being able to say, I can do that. The one thing is, they would be part of what everybody else is expecting of Staffordshire. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of disabled people would just love to say, I've got an apprenticeship like everybody else. I'm one of the others. And so, consequently, I just wondered if we could have some consideration for using disabled people as a group on their own special way of, if necessary, having an apprenticeship. Because I have no doubt there's many of them out there who can do a damn good job. And in that way, by discussions, we can find out all of those disabled people who are willing to work and who can do the jobs that people require.
So, absolutely agree with you on that. And within all of the work streams, all the priorities that sit within this strategy, a key part of that, and it's a golden thread that runs through all of it, is inclusion, and it's helping people to access training and employment, and removing barriers that are in the way of somebody being able to access those. Now, within that, one of the key things that the county council delivers that is specifically aimed at people who have those difficulties in accessing employment because of their personal circumstances is our careers ladder and our open door programme, which is particularly targeted at people who have disabilities to get them into work. And I can actually think of one council officer who I work with on a regular basis who has a considerable disability, who came to us at the county council through that scheme and on a regular basis saves my bacon with the work that he does. So it is a golden thread. It is very important. Vicky, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words just about some of the work we do in terms of helping people to find their way into those jobs that will work for them and their circumstances, and the support that we provide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so through the brokerage, one of our employment brokers is actually designated to support people with physical and learning disabilities into paid employment. He's funded by the Health and Social Care team to primarily deal with that cohort of people over the age of 18. We've got a number of companies across the county that support people with disabilities, whether that's a learning need, mental health or physical disability. And what the team did, not just the one broker, but the rest of the team support people with barriers into employment. And we find that some of these companies are extremely supportive and opening their eyes a bit more to, like you say, that this is a big cohort of individuals that are capable of working, but just need those adjustments into work. And we can support that through the brokerage. We have a one-to-one service with the individual and supporting that business as well. And sometimes it's just a minor adjustment and they achieve apprenticeships, full-time paid employment, part-time employment. And we're finding that companies are being more flexible around those individuals' requirements as well. So as a team, we're dealing with people every day with barriers, not just physical and learning disabilities, but all sorts of barriers into paid employment. And that's the support we can offer on that one-to-one basis.
Final thing I'd say about this is it's a good example of where doing the right thing is actually in your own best interests. If you look at it from the perspective of Staffordshire businesses, we've got very low unemployment. We need good people who are capable of working in these high performing roles, and I think it's easy, isn't it, to take the path of least resistance. So if you've got two people, one, there's no adaptation you need to make for them to do the role. There's another person where there is an adaptation. Firstly, our employers aren't in the situation where they can take the path of least resistance. We need to recruit more people. We have relatively few people looking for jobs. But also, it's helping employers understand that the small adaptation can bring a huge reward, because you're bringing somebody into your business who's got an enormous amount to offer.
Thank you for that. I appreciate over the years, companies have volunteered to take on disabled people. Companies I worked for, they've done just that. The one thing that I always see is obviously those who are, shall we say, very disabled. They just don't seem to be getting, if you want to, work that they can do. I know there's organisations that try to help them, but that's not giving them the opportunity to be a breadwinner like everybody else.
And I'll just comment on that briefly. If somebody wants to work and they have the capacity to work in whatever way, and some people with very profound disabilities, that capacity may be very limited, but it's our role to help those people, and it's incredibly important that anybody who wants a job, whatever their circumstances, that we're helping them to find that job. It's also equally important that we recognise there are some people who simply can't, and I think that pressure to be in work has to connect with reality, and that's why the focus is on supporting people and creating opportunities for them if they have barriers to doing that, whether they're mild or whether they're quite profound. But it's really important.
Thank you, members. I've just got a couple of questions for you, Philip. Where are we? When we say we're attending job fairs and business events, is it possible that we can have prior notice of those when they're happening? Because I've now managed to miss 2 because I didn't know about them. So I think communication needs to get better around that. And the under 25s, the 4.5% that aren't doing anything at the moment, is it possible that we can have a breakdown by each borough and district, and then we can maybe drill down into division specifics? You've answered the one on apprenticeships and work ethic. It's a big thing of mine that if you're supposed to be somewhere at 7:30 in the morning, that you're there at 7:30 or before. What do we believe about the post-COVID, the cohort of young people that were involved in lockdown, and the post-16s that we were all locked down at the same time? What are we doing to ensure that in 5 years' time we're still not blaming COVID for that cohort not being able to do what they want to do? Because we're now in 2024 and we're still saying, oh, it's COVID, it's down to COVID. And I think we as a county council as a whole need to move past the post-COVID and where we're going with that. So just, what are we doing to ensure that that cohort of young people at either end of the spectrum are not going to be still in 5 years' time saying, well, it's because I was locked up during COVID?
Okay, so on the first 2 points regarding prior notice of careers events that we're attending, Vicky has noted it down, so it will happen. Regarding NEETs and that statistical information, Darren will have noted that down, yes. And we're hoping to bring a report to you in a couple of meetings' time specifically on NEETs, so we'll include that as part of the pack, so that we can see if there are any geographical trends there, along with the other trends that we want to look at. Regarding this cultural issue, I'm going to have to push back gently against what you've said, because whilst it is not a reason to do nothing about it, quite the opposite, it's a reason to do a lot about it. The consequences of the pandemic are something we're going to have to live with, particularly through all of the children that we've got who were alive when the pandemic was here, and are going through their schooling now. And I spend a lot of time in schools. I've also, as I think I'm married to a secondary school teacher, but I'm a school governor in a primary school. I do a lot of work in this area. You see it across the ages, from frighteningly very young children in their first couple of years in school all the way through. It was toxic, but it feeds into those wider societal trends that we've seen. I'm not going to attempt to unpack today, because we don't have the time and it's not a core purpose, but there's a lot there that the pandemic was like an accelerant for, and moved it all forwards in terms of really, really damaging trends in terms of behaviours. And we are going to be living with the consequences of that for many years to come. The key is that we don't just say, oh, it was the pandemic and we can't do anything about it. The key is that we do something about it. The key things for me within the context of this report, and where we pick up the baton with employability and skills, is it is around apathy, it is around aspiration, and it is about anxiety. They are the three things that I am really concerned that we do something about, because they are the biggest barriers to those people who are at risk of not succeeding in life, because they don't get the skills and they don't get the job that takes them forwards. Those are the things we need to tackle with them. One small thing I'll mention, just on our work with NEETs, traditionally that work's done at the point where young people are leaving school. And I've taken a very strong position that I think that's too late. And we're developing a pilot scheme to start doing that work in year 9, so as students before they start GCSE. And that's about that apathy point for me. It's the kids who think, what's the point? A lot of them say, oh, I don't need to, but really when you dig under the surface, it tends to be that they just don't feel confident enough to do it. Or they've got some mistaken belief that they don't need qualifications. I think we need to start working with those young people before they embark on their GCSE courses. So that's something that we're looking to develop a pilot in doing. But really we need to be working with these young people from the point that they start school. And there needs to be work in early years as well, in truth. It's a society-wide issue, but we will play our part in it.
Thanks, Philip. That was my exact point about the COVID children, as we call them.
Yeah, forgive me, Tina. Vicky wanted to say a word on that as well, if that's all right.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree about the young people, and one of the things we're doing as a team of enterprise advisors is going into schools from year 7 and speaking to young people about the world of work. And the schools have now recognised it, and careers is actually on the curriculum in the majority of schools, and have careers advisors and career directors in high schools, and taking businesses into schools to talk to young people about the world of work and what they expect from work, about the timekeeping, what to wear, how to behave. And a lot of companies are taking people on those attributes rather than their qualifications, if they're willing to work and want to work and they're showing that enthusiasm. And one of the things we do a lot of is mock interviews for year 10 students, and some of those companies say come back to me and do work experience if they find somebody at that event. And we have hundreds of companies that support those within the school. So things are happening. We've got an event in the next couple of weeks in SP1. We're bringing some schools into the county council to see what we do and encourage them to come and work for us. So things are slightly being done, and young people are engaging with us. But like Philip said, there's a lot of work there that needs to be done.
Thank you. And I did miss one point. When we talked about technical skills, how will the changes in the HS2 fast rail affect our technical skills cohort as well? Because the line has now stopped in certain places. Where are those people that were potentially on apprenticeships being moved to, or are they being moved to different companies?
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that I'd say on that one. The first is, as particularly those of us who live in the south of the county will know, HS2 is continuing in our area. There is a lot of work that is going on, so many of those people are still gainfully employed on their apprenticeships. We would quite like that work to finish, though, really. So you raise a valid question, but many of those will have completed their apprenticeships before that work completes. And I do know, whatever criticisms I might have of HS2 Limited, I do know they're committed to making sure that they get those apprentices through their courses. So I expect that for most of those people that will happen. Of course, that pipeline then finishes. Because previously we would have expected HS2 Limited to be employing more apprentices as they go further up the line. In terms of other opportunities for those people to go elsewhere, we do have very strong demand in engineering and construction roles. It is one of our high demand areas. The West Midlands rail freight interchange is a good example of that, and that will probably take up a lot of that. A lot of that supply of people who'd like to go into those areas, and it's one of the areas actually that we'll be discussing in the next report, because the interchange is having a big impact in terms of skills and employability already, even though they're only just getting spades in the ground. The other thing to say is the broader demand in this sector is huge, and being based where we are in the country, our geography lends itself to people training in these areas, because employers like to be based in our part of the world for these sort of place-based activities, because they can get their workforce to lots of places very easily. So I think we can have some confidence about that. But it's always a point to be very mindful of when you have a big employer who takes a change in direction, as HS2 Limited have. Oh, Darren, to you. Yes.
Just like to add a comment around the green economy. So within the report, you'll have seen that big driver currently within our economy is the progression towards net zero by 2050. So there's a vast range of opportunities within the green economy, many of which are engineers. We're starting to see that within the job vacancies data now. So currently we're seeing an increase in examples would be heat pump engineers and retrofitting properties, so installation of solar panels, etc. within our housing stock. So there's a massive opportunity up to 2050 within the green economy, and that's a big priority within our strategy, our economic strategy, and also the local skills improvement plan. So working very closely with partners. Examples would be the IoT. Once that's in place next year, that will obviously drive a lot of the green skills within our economy and put in place those jobs that we require to achieve net zero by 2050. So lots of opportunities for young people and adults within the green economy.
I might just add to that a little plug for the A5500 corridor, which, without the investment from government that we hope to see, whoever takes over in 5 weeks' time, there'll be massive increase in demand for skilled engineers for hydrogen manufacturing. Principally hydrogen-based engines to go into vehicles, but also hydrogen boilers for home heating, focused here in our county. So I think our concern is more going to be the supply of people rather than the demand for those types of apprenticeships.
Thanks, Philip. Well, if there are no further comments or questions, we've got 3 recommendations for this report. Consider the update on progress made in the delivery of the County Council's employment and skills strategy since its consideration by the committee in 23. Consider the interventions already made by the County Council and partner organisations, and recommends further interventions to be considered by Cabinet that the committee believes would help to enable the successful delivery of this strategy. And more than welcome to invite the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills to bring us an update maybe in 6 months' time. I think it's really important that we do that, because we need to make sure we have that progress. We need to know where we're going from A through to Z, and you're always welcome to come to this committee, as you know. So are we happy to move those on block? Yeah. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Councillor Smith, can you press F1 on your laptop, please, because it keeps pinging with all your emails on. Thank you. Okay. We'll move swiftly on to item 5, which is the review of jobs and careers brokerage service performance. I believe we've already kind of edged our way in. So back to you, Councillor White.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, necessarily that's crossed over with the last report, but I think it's a really good thing that we've got the two here together. Is the jobs and careers brokerage services is a key part of delivering our employability and skills strategy overall. And we wanted to bring it back for a review at this point, because the brokerage now is fully established, and we want to report back to you on what we have been able to build, but also take a forward look as to where we're going with this in the future. This will be a bit of a double act with Vicky, as this is the service that she manages. But I will go first, and then I'll hand over to Vicky to make any further comments. So just in terms of background, the Cabinet agreed to invest in this service in January 2022. That was a commitment of five-year investment programme of £328,000 per year, so 328,000 in 22-23 and in 23-24, and that investment will continue into the new financial year. Our goal, however, is that this is a team where we secure external investment to support it as well, because it is geared towards supporting employers to find the people that they need, and to help our job seekers into skilled employment. And the key thing within that is that it's matching up the people who are looking for jobs with the jobs that are available, but also the training and skills packages that allow them to access those jobs. And we had identified in Staffordshire that there was a gap where we have job seekers and we have had a lot of demand for employment for quite a lot of years, but that gap in terms of training and skills offer was one that employers and job seekers weren't always successfully bridging themselves. So in terms of the purpose of the Jobs and Careers Service, it delivers a variety of specific services. So the first and most fundamental of those is recruitment support. So providing employers with a local recruitment service that's complementary to what the private sector does. We're not looking to compete with recruitment agencies, but to complement what they do. To provide employer engagement, most particularly within the small and medium enterprise sectors of our economy, which, as we know, are a priority for us as a council to support. To provide engagement, particularly with unemployed people, so working in conjunction with Job Centre Plus, to help those people to access the jobs market. To provide intervention to people who have had pre-employment support, but where they need further support, particularly in terms of training and gaining the skills that they need for a particular job. Then providing screening and matching services, so helping those organisations that have got particular needs to match up individuals who suit their requirements. Aftercare, quite important to the point we discussed in the earlier item about people who might start in a role but then leave it. So providing further support both for employers and employees, and making sure that we're aligning our jobs and careers offer with the other activities that we've got going on in the council. So particularly around our inward investment service. So if we've got new employers coming into the county, making sure that we can wrap around them and help them find the workforce that they require. The service is principally delivered by a digital web-based service, so that's staffjobscareers.com. Recommend everybody to check it out, and that's the front door for people to access the service. But then, crucially, once they have access to the service, they also get access to a human being. So one of Vicky's team of jobs and careers brokers who can help them with all of the areas that we've just discussed. We are agnostic in terms of what types of jobs employers seek to recruit to through the service, or indeed what job seekers are looking for. But we do have some priorities within that. So these are aligned to the county's corporate priorities. So health and social care, apprenticeships, careers and participation supported internships, early years care, the visitor economy, sustainability in the green economy, and highways are particular focuses for us within this because they're priorities for the local authority. My throat's getting a bit dry, so Vicky, do you want to talk about the actual structure of the team and who we've got?
Yeah.
And then I'll come back in a moment.
Yeah.
Do you want to take the notes?
Okay.
So you can go through in the order that's in the report.
So the team consists of 7 employment brokers that all specialise within employability and recruitment through their previous roles. 4 of the employment brokers are designated to helping anybody throughout the whole of Staffordshire. So any referrals that we get either through the website or events that we attend, and like Philip said, they offer all that ongoing support for job seeking. Whatever journey that might take for them. It might take a week, it might take 12 months, but those 4 employment brokers do that one-to-one support. We've also got an employment broker who I mentioned before, who's funded by our health and social care team, and his priority is referrals from our adult social work team. So all the adult social workers within our county council teams refer those individuals they're working with who may need additional support, and that's mainly neurodiverse, mental health, autism, Asperger's, etc., and he offers that ongoing one-to-one support. We've also got 2 employment brokers who are funded and designated to the West Midlands interchange that's being built. They've been funded for the next 10 years by the builders Wimvic. Their role at the moment is not dealing with individuals into work, they're actually dealing with the site and the subcontractors. And as we mentioned before, at the moment it's just groundworks. We had a meeting yesterday and an update with the investors that we are looking at the new year now for contractors to come onto site. So the 2 employment brokers are working very closely with Wimvic and the investors on how that's going to look and how we deliver that. But 100% of all those vacancies and all training opportunities will come through the brokerage team over the next 10 years to build the site, and that will involve the 2 country parks that are being built within the site as well. And then once the site is built, we will then support the occupiers for the following 5 years with those jobs and training on site. As part of that, we've got a West Midlands Interchange Employment Partnership Group. We've only had, I think, 3 meetings now, and that consists of about 50 partners and stakeholders across the county. We have got 2 employment brokers. They can't do it on their own, so we are going to have to rely on those partners that are working with us and supporting. And that will involve DWP. We're working with the IoT, the colleges, the South Staffs colleges, the schools, and how we're going to support different routes of employment on the interchange site. And again, that will involve apprenticeships, work experience. And we are working with the majority of schools in South Staffs at the moment and taking young people out onto site. And also Winvic are taking activities within the schools to encourage young people to come onto the site. I think that's, have we got everything on there?
Cover everything?
Yeah, I think so. And again, like I mentioned before, we are all enterprise advisors through the Careers Enterprise Hub. So we're very heavily involved with the careers and the routes to careers. So not only are we helping residents and job seekers into paid employment, we are working with those young people taking those next steps if it's not university. We do a lot of work around results days, both for GCSE and A-levels, trying to encourage young people not to panic, that there are other routes into employment. We've also got the Open Door Staffordshire programme, which has been running for about 12 years, which is a structured work experience programme where we support people that are quite not ready into work, but they do a part-time work experience programme within a company that they're hoping to achieve paid employment in order to get them skills, experience and an up-to-date reference on the CV. And the majority of people that come through the brokerage take that service first. And that's where we're working with the young people in care and giving them the opportunity to see the world of work and come in through Open Door. And we're doing a lot of work with our HR team and encouraging people to come and work with the County Council. And again, we're working with lots of different people across the county, including all the 8 prisons. We work with ex-offenders and current offenders into paid employment. We do a lot of work with the military and the ex-servicemen and women coming into the county, and again working with those agencies that support those individuals, and more recently the refugee communities, particularly the Ukraine families that have come into the county and supporting those into paid employment. And on the back of that, again, like Philip said, we work with businesses. We've linked in with over 250 businesses in the last 12 to 18 months that we're encouraging them to not just place an advert on a website, but to look at other alternatives and different cohorts of people into paid employment, different routes to employment. And again, those new companies that are coming into the county, and particularly with I-54, we do a lot of work with those new occupiers coming onto site there that we're engaging with as well.
If I just pick up the baton for the last bit. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a service that we've been rolling out. So 23-24 was the first full year of operation for the service. During that year, the Jobs and Careers Service supported just under 200 job seekers, 114 candidates who were using the Open Door service. So we talked about that earlier, those supported work placements, and we supported 49 job seekers directly into paid work as well. In terms of other activities that the team was involved in, we're discovering a bit of a Swiss Army knife for anything that goes on within the jobs and employability space, because we've got that team of people who are all experienced in working within recruitment and employability, and our enterprise advisors. So the team's been out and about very actively, so supporting tourism events at Alton Towers, supporting the Find It Stoke and Staffs launch at Aston Marina, Send Career events, Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce, business networking events, DWP-led jobs fairs in Cannock, Tamworth and Lichfield. Another activity that I was particularly keen that we were involved in was on A-level results day. So having a service there for Staffordshire school leavers who, perhaps had a surprise in their A-level results and were looking for a different option. So that was hugely beneficial for us as well. We also are engaging with other major employers when they come into the county. The other one that I'd highlight, because they've been quite keen to feed back to us how beneficial it's been for them, is Pets at Home with their relocation to Stafford. We've provided them with a lot of support through this service, and the more of those good news stories that we can build up, where we have major employers coming into Staffordshire that we've supported, the better it is for supporting that inward investment proposition that we have. There are other places in the country who do this really well. So when you're an employer coming in, and one of your main concerns is, where do I can find the employment land, but where do I find the workforce from, that you can immediately say, here you go, here are the people who will support you with this. And we're developing a good track record with that already. Just in terms of engagement with the online platform as well, during 23-24, the website received just over 65,000 page views. Of those, just shy of 40,000 actually properly engaged with the page, which, if you know anything about page engagements, to have that proportion of the people who visit actually doing something with your site is actually pretty significant. So we're happy that we've got a good platform there that's engaging, and that people are finding their way to it. I won't attempt to go into too much more of the outputs, because there are quite a few more in the report that I'm sure you have read, but we could be here all day if we went through them all. In terms of priorities for the coming year, and this is the final point I just wanted to cover, our priorities are to, as you would expect, increase the number of job seekers supported, increase the number of job seekers going into paid employment, to ensure that the processes that the service carries out are as efficient as possible, and that's mostly about getting feedback from service users, employers, potential employees, and training providers. Further development of the marketing offer, so that we get more people engaging with this, and increasing that focus on the County Council's own priorities, so making sure that the service is aligned to delivering the areas where we particularly need workforce. Or if there are any other priorities that you'd highlight, Vicky, or have I done that justice?
No, that's...
No?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think I'll close there and hand over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Philip. Graham, have you got a question?
Thank you. Vicky, you mentioned people leaving the armed forces. Do you work with bodies such as the social groups that help armed forces, places where they can meet fellow members? I am well aware that armed forces might well have mental health issues if they've been in combat, etc. And getting those back into paid employment, I think, is incredibly important. So do you work with all those other groups? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we've worked with a number of organisations over the past 10 years that are supporting ex-servicemen and women, including Walking Wounded, British Legion, and I actually sit on a working group that brings all those together, and we have meetings with all those agencies. We also link in with places like the Hive and the family and friends that are on site. So we also support partners and young people of the armed forces that are moving into Staffordshire, because obviously they're job seeking as well as the servicemen and women. In relation to some of the barriers that individuals have, as you say, mental health is huge, and we try and support as much as we can. We are working with somebody at the moment who has gone through significant trauma and had to leave the services. We try and support it on a one-to-one basis. He's actually coming into the council for a couple of hours just to experience the offices, just to come and speak to some of our managers in the area of work he's interested in. So we take those steps that's suitable to those individuals. But again, they are heavily supported by whoever is the agency behind them. We've also got some key training providers that we work with that are just primarily for ex-servicemen and women, particularly in the construction industry. They only take on ex-servicemen and women, and they train them in construction in order to get them into paid employment. So we have few numbers that come to us. We actually went to Stafford International a couple of weeks ago, which is the biggest service recruitment fair. There's over 250 companies that attend that event, and we attended that, and that's for people that are due to leave in the next 12 months, leaving the military, and the majority of people we spoke to are coming back into Staffordshire, so we will be offering that support.
Just really briefly to add to that, and again it's a slightly more selfish point. So as a county, we are very, very proud signatories to the military covenant, but we really we live and breathe that here. It's not just something that you sign up to because you're expected to, and we know the backgrounds of various of our members and key council officers in military service that I think sort of lend themselves to that culture. But just being selfish for a moment, we're fortunate in Staffordshire that we are the base for a lot of the brightest people in our armed forces as well. So the headquarters of Defence Medical Services in Whittington, and the Signals Regiments here in Stafford. And wherever those people come from, because we have people who return to the county when they finish their military service, who could be in any part of our armed forces, but we also want to keep those people who've come here to serve, and for them to stay here in Staffordshire, whether that's to work for our employers or to set up their own businesses. It's a selfish point, but we've got huge talent that comes into our county to do military service based here. And we want to keep those people here. So we really value the engagement that we've got with the armed forces, and we'd like to do more of it, both for our returners, but also for those who've come to us.
Any further questions? No. On the priorities, the KPIs, JKL. Feedback evaluation from business and job seekers. I know that's ongoing, but where are we so far? What is the feedback so far a year in?
Okay, so I gave you one or two of the sort of bigger highlights in terms of larger employers. But Vicky, I'll maybe ask you, as you're directly collecting that. It is a work in progress, isn't it? But what are the general themes insofar as you can discern them?
Yeah, we are 12 months in, so now we are settled. We are looking at how we're going to evaluate the job seeker, how long they've stayed in employment, because obviously once they found employment they could leave the next day, so we are doing that 12-month review now, but also talking to businesses and coming back to return business for us. So we have a number of companies, particularly smaller companies, that didn't know they needed somebody until we went to them, and now they're coming back to us for more job seekers, whether that's through Open Door, whether that's through apprenticeships. If I just use Ideal Standard as an example, they took on somebody through Open Door as a volunteer, as work experience. They've now offered somebody an apprenticeship, that person an apprenticeship, and that happened as well in a smaller IT firm in Cannock, a young man with learning needs, and again they reverted that Open Door into an apprenticeship. So, and they are now coming back to us. We've got companies that we use on an ongoing basis that support us, like Amy. We do an awful lot of work with the highways team. They're extremely supportive. Stone Group, which is a big computer company in Stafford, they take a lot of people for us. And Pets at Home, they're looking at another 500 people for that new site up on the A34. And again, so we're getting that feedback. So, and one company, Luna, based at Wedgwood, they actually spoke about us at the tourism event at Alton Towers, and stood up and recommended us as a service. So we are slowly getting that feedback. So far, it's all been good, fingers crossed. But we are looking at how we're going to measure that and how we're going to collect that from those people that have used the service.
If I can just add to that, the most important thing for me as the political lead on this, and for the service, is that Now that we've got this rolled out, and it is a feature on the landscape, it's maximising its usefulness. That's the thing that we really want to do. So that engagement with people and organisations that have used the service is key, because we want it to be of benefit to the maximum number of people and businesses, and making sure that it works for whatever size of organisation as well, because we've got that priority for those big investments, those big employers, and that's of huge benefit to Staffordshire people. But those small and medium-sized businesses, the startups and step-ups, is a really big priority for the council as well. You want to bring established businesses into your area to invest, but growing your own is the best thing of all, I think, because that might be the next Pets at Home, or whoever else that we've got here, if we can just support their growth. So it's making sure that we're fit for purpose, for all types of employer, and for all types of job seekers as well.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we've got 2 recommendations for this report. We consider the progress of the Staffordshire Jobs and Careers Service since its establishment in April 2023, and we review the priorities for the service for 24-25 in supporting the ambition for the Staffordshire economy to grow, generating more and better paid jobs. Everybody happy with those? Aye. Can we have a vote, please? Thank you. Thank you, Darren, Philip and Vicky, for your time this morning. The first committee is going well so far. You were the guinea pigs, so thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you very much, Chair.
And whilst you change places, we'll move swiftly on to item 6, which is the Staffordshire Cultural Strategy, and it's now Councillor Victoria Wilson and team.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful morning here we are in Staffordshire, even though I think it's raining. I'm here with the Head of Archives and Libraries, Joanna Terry, the Libraries and Arts Manager, Sue Ball, and Catherine Mann, the Assistant Director for Culture, Rural and Safety within this authority. So, the cultural strategy. Well, the development of a cultural strategy is a real priority here in Staffordshire County Council's Corporate Delivery and Improvement Plan. And the purpose of this is to raise the profile and the importance of culture across Staffordshire and how it contributes to making the county a really great place, an even better place, I should say, to live, work and visit. So we want to really define what the cultural strategy is and why it matters. And I feel that culture defines who we are, our place, our communities, through things like art, music, film, literature, heritage, gaming, and many leisure and sport activities. What we want to do is to map and celebrate and promote the cultural assets in Staffordshire for us and our partners. And it really matters because it helps to support thriving communities, and evidence shows us that participation increases well-being here as well. It also makes a significant contribution to our economy, and it also, surprisingly, creates high-value jobs and retains skilled workers and their families. So we currently have a great offer here in Staffordshire already. As you know, we already have the Libraries and Arts Service, and that works across the county. It provides access not just to books and reading, but also to our cultural activities, to our arts and poetry, and a massive variety of events like history and science days. And they also attract external funding to support community arts projects. And the New Vic Theatre, SLA, provides funding for the theatre itself, enabling them to attract further funding. Staffordshire Archives and Heritage, as you know, enables access for communities, individuals and visitors to the cultural history of this magnificent county through its nationally important collections. And you're all aware of the Staffordshire History Centre project, this brand new visitor facility that we're developing here in Stafford with National Lottery Heritage Fund funding and a programme of activities across the county working with libraries and other museums. And our visitor economy scheme also works in partnership with all the local authorities in Staffordshire and Stoke to attract leisure and visitors to stay here longer. And it relies on a strong cultural product to market Staffordshire. And as the new LVEP develops, this will lead destination management in response for growth, prosperity and sustainability of the visitor economy here in Staffordshire. And also we've got the environment and countryside, and that enables access for visitors as well as local residents to our natural environment and countryside estate, of which we have a most beautiful example here in the county. And that feeds into the great outdoors offer that we have for Staffordshire. We think that cultural strategy links to the national environment strategy will be able to be promoted through these priorities. And as you know, We Are Staffordshire is a place brand marketing organisation that celebrates Staffordshire as a really great place to live, work, visit, study and invest in your future. There are a number of visitors attractions here. There are business improvement districts, and these are all part of the Ambassador Network. And they require a really strong cultural offer to market this county and its brand to increase awareness and promote investment here in this county. So developing the strategy and engagement, we're working with an excellent organisation known as the Audience Agency, and they were appointed as consultants in December last year to help us to develop this strategy. We've also established a project board, and that's been drawn from the key county council services referred to above. And we've also done some desktop research that's been completed, and we're currently talking to partners, to stakeholders and to residents to identify the key themes for this strategy. It's early days, but we have already found some answers and some findings and some things that we need to do. And we've identified that the key age range of younger people is actually underrepresented. Now, this doesn't mean that we should only deliver activities to this age range. Really, the ambition for this cultural strategy is to align with a number of other council strategies, including, as you've already heard this morning, skills, employment, and also health and climate. And in this instance, those strategies directly impact all residents of this county. And in our conversations so far, retention of young people in Staffordshire has been referenced a number of times by council leads and people that we've spoken to in the previous earlier consultation stage. So we're looking to create a strategy that supports better opportunities for all residents. The key audience spectrum segments are identified, as you see, and we've established that Staffordshire has lower levels of cultural engagement with arts compared to other parts of this country, which is a real shame. So we want higher engagement with theatre, with concerts and with plays and all manner of culture in this county. A conference called the Workshop at We Are Staffordshire revealed a lot of enthusiasm for the development of this strategy, and noting the geography and the diversity of the county, there is a desire to visually map cultural assets and really promote that participation. So in terms of next steps, Audience Agency will analyse the results of partner conversations and surveys. We'll work more closely with the project board to develop draft strategy, and the strategy will be taken to our cabinet in September this year. We really anticipate that there will be a high-level strategy with key priorities, and sitting underneath that an action plan with delivery leads and KPIs to measure progress following the launch of the strategy, which is autumn 2024. And we'll use the strategy to promote our cultural offer and attract economic investment. So today we're asking Overview and Scrutiny to comment on all of those themes and anything that you think is of concern, and ask for your input really to shape the strategy at this early stage. So I'm very happy to take questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Victoria. Graham?
Thank you, Chair. 3 quick points. One, as an art and theatre buff, I'm very, very happy to input into anything you want, and I did have a career writing business strategies for people, so if there's any way I can help, I'll be delighted to. My second point is I think we need to be promoting more visiting attractions, things that come in, whether it's a visiting theatre company up from London perhaps, but also art shows. And I was thinking, can we get some of the art out of people's private collections to be put on show? For example, I know a guy who's a clock fanatic, and he has about 200 clocks in his house. And I just thought, you know, if having a little, in one of the museums, a room set aside for clocks from 1700 through to present day would be quite amazing for an awful lot of people who are interested in clocks. And the third point is, how close are you working with the National Trust, who have got a number of properties in Staffordshire, and they've got great art collections. And I was thinking that, hey, they move their art, they move stuff around and loan stuff, and I just thought if we can tap into that and just have something associated with, I don't know, with Wedgwood or other great Staffordshire people of the past, I just think that's worth noting. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm Joanna Terry, Head of Archives and Heritage. So on the 2 questions you asked, the one about sort of private art and clocks, can we display that? So what we do is for the County Museum, which is part of my service, and also the other museums across the county. So we've got museums in Cannock Chase, Tamworth and Newcastle. They work really closely with local communities to take items into their collection, or they may lend items to other museums to display them. So certainly if there was a private collector who was willing to either lend or donate their collection, then that's something that we would encourage where it fitted in collection policies, and something we'd be keen to discuss with people. The next point about working with the National Trust, so we although we no longer have the museum at the Shugborough site, which is now managed by the National Trust, we still work really, really closely with them. They've certainly been helping us in terms of development of the Staffordshire History Centre, and the National Trust is a key partner that we'd be consulting with on the development of the cultural strategy, because they've obviously got a number of properties across our county, and they hold collections of art and other objects that again might be of interest. So we do maintain a good relationship with them.
And if I can add that, Councillor Hutton, any offers of assistance from somebody that's obviously as knowledgeable as you are very welcome. So we'll consider that. Thank you.
Charlotte?
I just wondered what you were doing in terms of exploring the cultural history of our communities. For instance, at the moment there's a Polish exhibition within Leek, which is around the 80th anniversary of the victory at the Monte Cassino battle in the Second World War. But it links back to the settlement of Polish refugees at Blackshire Moor in just on the outskirts of Leek. And of course, there are many families that have Polish connections, and that particular exhibition is not going anywhere within Staffordshire, it's going to Manchester. So, you know, it seemed to me that that exhibition, which is being put together by local Polish families with the help of an organisation called Outside, has put together a very professionally produced exhibition. But also, you know, there are other areas where we can feed back into the contribution made, well, not necessarily this war, but you've got the Women's Land Army, for instance, which has a lot of connections, well, for the First and but mostly Second World War, looking at women working within the forestry and the agricultural sectors during the Second World War, both the lumberjills and the Women's Land Army themselves. But then going back further, for instance, you know, we have a connection with William Morris, but that is generally more celebrated in Macclesfield than it is in Staffordshire, despite the fact that clearly his links with North Staffordshire are much greater than in fact in Macclesfield, connected to silk manufacture and design. So those sort of areas where we have a very rich heritage, we don't seem to celebrate that, whether it be a cultural heritage linked to nationality, or whether it be an artistic heritage linked to, you know, textile and design heritage. So there's a rich opportunities which we don't seem to really scrape the surface of.
Thank you. I think every corner of the county has some sort of cultural history that maybe isn't always emphasised or highlighted, and that's really important. I think that's a really interesting point. I'm going to hand over to Sue Ball because of the work that we do within our library service, and then I don't know if Joanna wants to come in just to finish up after.
Yes, thank you. Sue Ball, Libraries and Arts Manager. We do have exhibitions in libraries, and we try to work with local partners and local organisations and also local museums as well to promote and highlight those collections. I think it is a really important point that you make, and in terms of the strategy, as Victoria said, sitting behind the strategy, we're looking at an action plan and key priorities for us. And I think one of those key priorities is going to be how we promote and how we celebrate and make more use of the cultural heritage that we have in Staffordshire. Yesterday, the Audience Agency ran a sector workshop with different cultural organisations across Staffordshire, and then there's going to be another evening session on the 6th of June where they'll be exploring things like this and working with the local museums. They've been invited to that workshop as well. So I think definitely that sort of thing will come out as part of that action plan for the strategy.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about ensuring that all aspects of cultural history are represented and celebrated. And I think that's something that we'd want to prioritise in development of the strategy, so that you know, everybody who's resident in Staffordshire feels that they can see themselves reflected in whether it's the events or the exhibitions that are offered. And I think, as Victoria said in the presentation, one of the emerging themes was about a really strong visual representation of what we do already have and where that's available. So I think, again, it's about promoting what, you know, all of you as local members will know is on your patch, and making sure that that's actually promoted across the whole of the county, so that it's, you know, it's brought to the appropriate attention. We are looking to certainly diversify our collections so that they are more representative, and we have done some work with Eastern European communities That's one of the sort of smaller projects on the History Centre project, but it is something we're aware of, and the importance to ensure that everyone feels that there is something for them in our cultural offer.
Thank you. I think it's down to all members to let Victoria and team know what we've got in our little bit of the county. Tamworth's got Colin Grazier, for example. We've got quite a huge Jamaican community, which won't be the same across the county. So I think it's down to us to try and feed back into what you guys are trying to do. David.
Thank you, Chairman. I look at item 12 in our current offer, and I see that we have a service level of agreement of 35,700 with the theatre in Stoke-on-Trent. I would like to know where we have looked at similar funding for our other theatres in Staffordshire, where we've got theatres in Stafford, Cannock, Burton, Tamworth, and of course the Lichfield Garrick, which I have a very personal concern about. All theatres struggle with funding, and so I look at what we need to do as far as our theatres are concerned, and we need to spread. I suppose if you spread it too thinly, it doesn't have the effect that you need to achieve. But I would like to have seen the funding spent in Staffordshire. Not that I in any way look at the funding which is going to Stoke-on-Trent. It's probably providing a very valuable service, but you look at the mileage from my area through to
I think you'll find it's Newcastle under Lyme, not Stoke-on-Trent.
When you look at the distance that we have to travel between the south of the county, the probability of travelling to Stoke-on-Trent is very minimal. I'm concerned when we look at item C on page section 31, where it talks about the low levels of cultural engagement with the arts compared to England as a whole. I don't understand that, and I think that's something that we need to look at again. And I would just highlight that we have just had the Lichfield Bower with several thousand people there. We have Shakespeare in the Park, as you also do in Stafford. We have Lichfield Festival. We have the whole range of the Fuse event, the Jazz and Blues Festival. We have our own band, Lichfield Band. We also have the Lichfield Sinfonia, which performs concerts in the area. I can't believe, if you look at bringing all of that together, maybe Lichfield is a cultural highlight and everywhere else in Staffordshire is a load of heathens, but I don't believe that, because I believe that's reflected across the whole of the county. And so I don't understand item C, and I would like to have some sort of explanation of that. Is it because so many events didn't happen during COVID, when we were looking at difficult times when events didn't take place? But if you look at what we're doing now, you can't go for a week without there isn't some major cultural activity taking place. So I would just finally just highlight 2 points. One is that if you take the rural communities, and I don't know about the urban areas, but the rural communities in Staffordshire have around 30% of their population is over 65. And we need to recognise that, because so much of what we're doing is youth orientated, but we have a very high retirement population. And also I would just mention again that there is a government grant of £10,000 per application for doing some of this work. I have a grant coming through for £10,000 for my village, And we also have for Shenstone already £20,000 from the government to do much of the work that we're looking at here. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I think Councillor Atkins was just point of clarification that that particular theatre is actually in Newcastle under Lyme, I understand. I think Councillor Smith makes a very good point. Really, everything he is saying speaks to why this needs to happen. We really need to emphasise and identify where the culture is in this county. I think this county's been disregarded for way, way too long. We have riches here to offer, and all of that information is absolutely essential if we're going to provide a really robust and strong forward-thinking strategy, cultural strategy going forward. We are only in the very early stages of this, and so all of this feedback is really well received, and we're grateful for it. And as you see on the board behind you, some of the questions are asking, what would you like the narrative around culture for Staffordshire to be? So I think those questions are being answered here today. And what new ideas or opportunities do you think should be considered? Again, I think everything that you're saying is absolutely spot on. And then again, tying together with businesses and other organisations and other creative groups, working together with all of those people so that we can realise those strategic aims is really important. I don't know if Catherine Mann wants to come in here at this point with anything further on that.
Do you want me to just explain the context about the New Vic Theatre? So the New Vic Theatre, we have been funding for a long period of time. When the County Council redefined their arts offer back in 2017, there was an agreement by the Cabinet that we would continue to provide funding at a reduced level to the New Vic Theatre. And the funding that the County Council provides, and also the funding that Stoke-on-Trent City Council provide, enable the New Vic to actually draw down funding from Arts Council England. And without that meaningful contribution from both local authorities, they wouldn't be able to draw down the funding in the same way. The New Vic Theatre is slightly different to the commercial theatres that we've got within other communities in that it's a producing theatre. And as part of the service level agreement, what that enables is some outreach activity that takes place throughout our libraries and within our communities to really widen people's access to theatre within local communities. So currently the agreement that we've got is aligned with the Arts Council funding period, which enables then the New Vic Theatre to have that NPO status. So it's a national portfolio holder, and it's seen as a significant investment in the arts within the county that without the County Council funding and the City Council funding, we might not get from Arts Council England.
Very quickly, Chairman. When I look, and I have a personal interest from the Garrick's point of view, the Garrick has a vibrant youth activity. Last week, a couple of weeks ago, they put on a superb performance of Oklahoma with tremendous young performers taking part. Every couple of months, there is something going on from the youth point of view. And they are a theatre that desperately needs help and funding. And I hope that we look at reviewing the support, not just to the Garrick, but to our other theatres.
Thank you very much. I think every member needs to send an email to Victoria and her team so that, well, you know, the information is what you need. You need to know what's going on where, because otherwise this strategy doesn't work, because we end up with it being very Stafford central. And we don't want that because, well, we do want Stafford involved, but we want every other borough district. There's 8 boroughs and districts, and I think you need to know exactly what's going on where for this strategy to emerge and to be successful. You know, Tamworth, we've got a castle, we've got so much going on. The email will be very long from me, and with all our summer festival and everything else, you know, I agree with David to a degree where we've got a lot going on for youth, but we've also got so much going on for our older generation as well. We have, what do they call it, Silver Line Theatre at where you can go and watch a film for a £5 between at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Assembly Room. So there is that going on. I'm not sure about what's going on in Lichfield, but I can only speak for Tamworth. So I think it's down to all of us to encourage every one of us to get that information to yourselves, because there appears to be a little bit of it lacking somewhere, and you can't possibly know what's going on everywhere across the county. It would be an impossible task. So if there's nothing else from members, we've got 2 recommendations that we note the development of a cultural strategy, and I think, you know, it's in its infancy, so at the moment it's going very well. And we comment on the emerging themes from the initial research and engagement. Well, as I've just said, that's down to us now to get you that information to inform this strategy for it to be a success. So is everybody happy with those 2 recommendations? Can we have a vote, please? There you go. Thank you, Victoria, Joe, Sue and Kathy for your attendance this morning, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, we'll move swiftly on to the work programme. Deb.
Thank you, Chairman. So within your pack, there's the regular item on the work programme. We are at the start of the municipal year, and the work programme planning event will take place on the 2nd July. This will be a session for all members and officers to attend. It will provide opportunity for members to consider proposed and planned items and identify any specific topics or of interest to inform the work programme. Councillor Hudson.
Can I propose that we move the 2nd July? It's 2 days before the election. I won't be attending. I've no intention, and I think everybody who's of a political nature will want to be campaigning in their areas.
Chairman?
Yes, I haven't spotted it was the 2nd of July. I'd got it in my head for June, actually. But yeah, if we can move that till after the 4th of July, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you,
that'll,
Chairman.
That'll come out as an email update.
So just to continue on the draft work programme, which we will now consider at a revised date, on the 23rd of July, which is the next scheduled meeting for this committee, we did have an item on intelligent traffic signals, which was suggested that this may be an interest for all members, and I think we're looking at a member development event for that session. The Staffordshire bus strategy, which is being considered by Cabinet on the 19th of June. At triangulation yesterday, it was suggested that this be an all-member briefing, and that any outcomes from that briefing session be fed to the Cabinet member when a decision is made at Cabinet. Now, that's on the bus strategy. After speaking to officers this morning, it's suggested that the bus service improvement plan, which will be a result of the strategy being approved, come to July meeting instead. Is that okay with you, Chair?
Yep, that fits in lovely. Thank you.
And just to finalise the other items, which are the regular items, the updates on Highways Transformation Recovery Plan and the Staffordshire County Council's Economic Strategy 6-monthly update. In addition to those items, there will be the final draft report from the Civil Parking Enforcement Working Group, which took place last year.
David.
Chairman, I was only wondering, with our new grand title for this committee, whether it affected our work programme and how much was coming in and how much was going out.
Let's just say there's little going out and more coming in. I think that's the right way around.
Yeah, if you want me to clarify, Chair, at Council on the 16th of May, the revised remits of the committees were agreed. The education and send element of this prosperous committee that has now moved to safeguarding and education committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today. We haven't got anything in confidential, so we don't need to do the exclusion of the public. So thank you for your attendance today, and I'll close the meeting at 11:55. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.